Welcome to episode 106 of Mike's Collection. I'm Mike, and the part of my collection that I'm going to be talking about today is my top 20 action figures of 2020. Now, this is my favorite list to do every year. I've only been doing YouTube videos for a couple of years, so this is only my second best of list. But before I was doing YouTube, I would do blogs and things like that. So I've been doing these top figures of the year list since 2012. And I started off doing the top 12 of 2012, top 13 of 2013. This year I'm going to do my top 20 of 2020. And this is probably where I'm going to draw the line. Next year it'll be my top 20 of 2021, top 20 of 2022. I just can't let these lists go on forever. Although, man, it is really hard to whittle these things down. I said this on a recent video, but when I do year-end lists, I always do one for movies, for music, sometimes for comic books, and for toys. And with those other mediums, I go to movies hoping I'll like it, but oftentimes it's disappointing. So obviously, you know, the luck of the draw, you end up with your favorites. The same thing with comic books. I buy the same series month after month, but writers and artists change and the quality dips, and there's highs and lows. And the same with music. You have your favorite artists, you get their new record, you hope it's going to be good, sometimes it's not. And, it's pretty easy, I find, to rank those things. The favorite album of the year is usually the one that I listen to the most, and things like that. But when it comes to action figures, I know what I'm getting when I'm buying it. Like, every now and again, I might open something up and it falls apart and it's way more brittle than I expected. But that's rare because most of the toy lines I collect are toy lines that I've been collecting for years. Like G.I. Joe, Transformers, Marvel Legends. So sometimes they'll make a figure and the look doesn't appeal to me, so I don't buy it. But most of the time I only buy toys that I like. So it's very hard to pick my favorites because there's not really any bad ones in my collection. But anyway, let's dive right into it. First, I just want to say this is maybe because this is my favorite video to do of the year. It's one that chances are will probably get some of the most views of the year. I probably shouldn't be using it to experiment, but I am. I'm doing it at the last week of December, and for Christmas, my wife got me a new kind of circle light that I'm staring into right now, and this little holder for my phone. And I've never shot these on my phone before. I've only ever done it on my tablet. So normally I have a big screen that I can see myself on. So if I'm doing something weird or my shirt wrinkles funny, I can tell right away. But now I'm doing this on my phone. The phone's farther away than it usually is. I'm probably staring in the wrong direction because I think the camera on my tablet is on this side, but my camera on my phone's on this side. So I keep looking over here, but I probably should be looking here. So anyway, I apologize for any of that. There's these little, twisty arms that are holding my phone and the light up. I'm worried they could start dipping over time. So, hopefully everything holds in place. So this is a bit of an experiment for me. So before I get into my list, I just want to tell you my basic rules of the list. And, these are just my own self-imposed rules. They're kind of silly, but generally for me to do my top 20 of 2020, these have to be figures that were released in 2020. And they have to be figures that I actually purchased and put into my collection in 2020. Like, there's amazing toys released every year. Some really expensive high-end from, Japanese companies, like the Hot Toys, for example. These are like $300 a piece. These really nice 12-inch figurines. However, I didn't get any Hot Toys this year. So before anybody comments about how could you say this toy is good when these way better toys were released, well, I didn't get those toys. So this is just the ones that I purchased in my collection. Also, I got some really cool toys this year that came out in prior years. But I can't put those on my list just because I tell myself I can't do that. It wouldn't be right if you guys are watching this video because you want to see what are the best toys this past year and I'm showing you something from like 7 years ago. That would be impossible for you to track down. So I try and just stick with the year it was released. Now, there might be a couple little exceptions to that rule. For example, there's some things that were released maybe late in 2019 that I didn't get until 2020. And not just that I didn't get, there were some figures released in 2019, which would probably have been pretty high on my list. For example, the Dr. Aphra figure from Star Wars Black Series. This is a character I really like. I never once saw the figure in stores. It was released, I think, pretty early in 2019. I could not get it. It was selling for high prices on the secondary market. So when Christmas rolled around, My brother asked me what I wanted for Christmas. I said I want the Dr. Aphra figure. He got it for me actually for my birthday in January. So I got it at the very start of 2020, and I love that figure. It lived up to my expectations. It's a character I really like. Never had a figure of her before. She would probably be pretty high up on this list. But she was released in 2019, and it's not that I couldn't have got her. She was available. I could have paid higher prices for her online, and I probably could have had her midway through 2019, but I didn't. However, a figure like, say, Cara Dune, she was released, I think, December 2019. I looked everywhere for her. I never saw her anywhere around here. I didn't get her until 2020, so I could put her on the list because I feel justified. She wasn't a figure I was able to get in 2019, so I would consider her a 2020 kind of carryover release. But I don't know if I have any of those characters that made it into my top 20. Like I said, Aphra might have. But anyway, so here we go. Let's get started. So before I show you number 20, I just want to show you that I got over, well, I think just shy of 200 action figures that were released in 2020. If you count the figures that I got that were released in previous years, like say Dr. Aphra, I over 200. Not to mention I got about 60 pop figurines, and I didn't really want to include them in this video, so I did a separate video where I ranked every single one of my 60 pop figurines that I got this year. So if you're interested in that, there's a video up of that I posted a couple of weeks ago. So anyway, I took all 200 of my action figures this year and I ranked them, and that was not easy to do. Admittedly, I got a little lazy at spots where I say, okay, well, I've got 10 different stormtroopers. They're all a little different. Am I going to space them all out? And I just said, whatever. 80 to 90 is all stormtroopers, things like that. So, yeah, I didn't put a ton of time and thought into it. It was kind of just, I looked at these things and started moving them around. How would I rank them? And at the bottom of my list was this figure. So this was like my 200th or whatever, 200, and I think it was actually like 230th or something. It's a little more than 200 I got. And so this is the foot soldier, the battle damaged foot soldier from NECA. So you can see he's got this blast damage, so you can see some wires and stuff poking out of his chest. And so this was essentially my least favorite figure that I purchased of the year. And that's saying something, because this is a cool figure. Like, the sculpt on this guy is pretty great. The battle damage is actually kind of cool. He's got a load of accessories. The reason why he's so low on my list is basically NECA released these foot soldiers in 2-packs with other characters. So I got 2 foot soldiers last year when I bought some Ninja Turtles, and these guys were packaged with the Turtles. This year when I bought Casey Jones and April O'Neil, they packaged more foot soldiers in there. Now, to their credit, rather than just make me buy the exact same figure 4 times, this year they changed it up and they made these guys battle damaged. So there'd at least be a little, diversity amongst the foot soldiers on my shelf. So the reason I put them so far at the bottom of the list is because even though it was a pretty cool figure, the foot soldiers has never been like one of my favorite kind of army builder types. I prefer a stormtrooper or a Cobra trooper. And this is a figure I got twice last year already. And if I was going to have one foot soldier in my collection, I wouldn't want a battle damaged one. So I prefer the other ones from last year. So this is the bottom of the list. So you can imagine how hard it was to rank, 200 plus figures to try and come up from the bottom to the top. So who knows? Maybe if I thought about this a little bit more, maybe a week from now, I'll think, you know what? I really should have put that figure in my top 20. But whatever. So here we go. Here's my top 20, starting with number 20. And this is Merman from the Masters of the Universe Origins toy line. So this is a brand new toy line that just came out this year from Mattel. In 2020, the toy line was exclusive to Walmart, so you couldn't buy it at any other stores or at any online retailers. It was strictly Walmart, and I was looking high and low for these things, and I couldn't find them anywhere. Wave 1 came out months and months ago. That had He-Man, Skeletor, Beastman, Teela, some of the key characters. And I was seeing people online, on Instagram, posting them. They were finding racks full of them, whole end caps, like in the States. But I live in Canada. I didn't see any of these figures for months. I never saw a single one of the Wave 1 figures. I never saw any of the Wave 2 figures. And then I heard that Wave 3 was hitting shelves about a month ago. And I was like, really? Wave 3 in the States and we still don't get any of them in Canada? It was very frustrating because I really wanted to get this line. Now, Merman, is my favorite Masters of the Universe class or Masters of the Universe character of all time. I had this toy when I was a kid, the original Merman, and I absolutely loved it. It was one of the things I wanted most for Christmas back in 1982 when these things were first released. My parents searched high and low. They couldn't find it anywhere. I remember being really worried I wasn't going to get Merman for Christmas. I have this weird memory, which my brother confirms. It sounds odd, but apparently my brother confirms this is how I've always remembered it. We finally found it. We were Christmas shopping with my dad. We went into a little store. It wasn't a big department store. They had Merman. I was so excited to get it. We brought it up to the counter, and the lady asked how old I was. My dad said I was 4, and the packaging said ages like 5 and up or 6 and up or something, and she wouldn't sell it to my dad, which I remember I was completely, as a kid, I was traumatized by this, finally finding the toy I wanted most for Christmas, and then the person at the store saying she wouldn't sell it to my dad. And I thought that was crazy. I ended up getting it from like Santa for Christmas. So I was thinking like, oh, thank God Santa came through because that bitch at the store wouldn't sell it to me. And I recounted it to my brother years later. I'm like, do you remember that? And he's like, yeah, I totally remember that. And then it kind of dawned on us, you know what probably happened is my dad wanted to get it for me from Santa, didn't want me to see him buying it. So he probably asked the lady at the counter to say, tell me you can't sell this to me and then slip it in my bag. That's probably what happened. However, I've asked my dad that, and he says he has no recollection of that happening or whatever, so I don't know. But that's probably what happened. But anyway, that Merman Christmas story is one of my earliest memories in all of life. I love Merman. I have later versions of Merman, like when Masters of the Universe came back in 2002, and again with the Classics line in like 2009. I have some little like Funko Pop versions of him and reaction figures of him. Lots of different versions of Merman. But yeah, he's absolutely one of my favorite characters. A while back, I did a list of the top 10 toys in my entire toy collection of thousands of toys. And the Merman from Masters of the Universe Classics was the top of my list. I love this character. And to find him in the store on December 23rd, that's what happened this year. I thought I'd actually had this list all written up because I thought, well, I'm going to probably get a handful of toys for Christmas and I'll add them in. But otherwise, my list isn't going to change very much. And then we went out on the 23rd to get the last of our like Christmas supplies, some pop, some chips. And I found Merman and the other 3 figures in the wave. So I also got Zodak, Roboto, and She-Ra. But when I saw this guy on the peg, and there was only one of each, like I ran down the aisle and I threw them in my basket and I hoarded over them. I was like terrified some crazy parent would try and rip them out of my cart, and I kind of forgot everything else I was buying. I just kind of ran up to the cash register and paid for him. I felt like a little bandit grabbing him and running, but I can't even tell you the childlike excitement of getting this figure. Now, and to be much more clear and take away the nostalgia for a minute, be more objective, that's the word I'm looking for. This figure is, it's a fun toy for kids, probably. Like, he's very, he's small, he's bright, he's got very minimal paint apps. The plastic feels kind of cheap and rubbery in places. Like, I don't think he even looks as good as the Merman from 1982, let alone the versions that came after that. So, it almost feels like a cheaper knockoff of the 82 figure. And so, yeah, objectively, is this stronger than 200 other figures I got this year? Probably not. But sometimes when making this list, nostalgia is definitely a factor. And yeah, this just elevated my whole Christmas. I got other cool stuff for Christmas. I was excited to get this stuff. My wife got me some cool toys. But seeing this Merman on the store shelf on December 23rd after looking for months and months and not seeing any of the other Masters of the Universe characters, I just can't even describe how happy it made me. It was, very childlike joy. So even though as a toy it's not super strong, it's a fun toy, and this is why he is number 20. He just squeaks onto my list just for that sheer nostalgic love. Now, let's move on to number 19. So this is Baxter Stockman. So this is from Super 7's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle line. So there are a couple of companies making Ninja Turtle figures right now. NECA is making figures, and so is Super 7. Super 7's figures are specifically based on the vintage toy line. So they don't really look like the cartoon or the movies or anything. NECA is handling that. But they're taking the old, like kind of 5-inch toys from Playmates, and then they're blowing them up, making them more detailed. And yeah, so this is Baxter Stockman. Now, he might not look like how you remember Baxter Stockman looking, and that's because I really wasn't sure if I was going to buy these toys from Super 7. Super 7 has made some great toys in the past. I buy quite a bit of stuff from them, but their stuff's pretty expensive. And I was already getting the Ninja Turtle line from NECA, and I thought NECA stuff was great. I had a couple of NECA figures on my best of list last year. So I'd already kind of dove into NECA, and then Super 7 announced these, and I was like, I can't buy them again. So I really didn't think I was going to. The first wave of figures, they did 4 figures. It had the Foot Soldier, which I said I'm not like a huge fan of. It had Splinter the Rat, again, not anybody I particularly love. And it had Raphael, so 1 Ninja Turtle, and then it had Baxter Stockman. So I thought, well, you know what? NECA hasn't done a Baxter Stockman yet. And I don't particularly like the way Baxter Stockman looks in the cartoon. So eventually NECA will do an animated version of Baxter, and they've actually since revealed it. And it looks a lot like the cartoon, so if that's your preferred look, great, but it wasn't mine. So I wanted the one based on the toy, and I thought, I'll try out Super 7 stuff by getting one of the figures from Wave 1, and I'm going to make it Baxter Stockman. The only thing I don't like about the vintage Baxter Stockman toy is that he had all these like purple buggy limbs, but then he had human like flesh colored hands, and I always thought that was kind of like gross looking. I know that's weird because a lot of turtles are gross characters, but something specifically about him having all these purpley bug limbs but still having his human arms attached kind of grossed me out. So I didn't pull the trigger right away. However, then Super 7 over the summer announced they were going to do a special, what would have been a convention exclusive. There was no convention, so they only did it online. But they made this online exclusive glow-in-the-dark Baxter Stockman. So they took their existing figure that hadn't even come out yet, nobody had it yet, and they released it in this like translucent blue material. And if you hold it under a light here, he glows in the dark, which is very, very cool. And I thought, okay, well, this solves the problem of the gross human hands because all of his skin is this translucent blue. He doesn't have purple limbs and human hands. So I thought, this is the Baxter Stockman I'm going to get. And I think he's really cool. He's really different. It's not a look that you typically see with Baxter Stockman. So, yeah, he's big. He's bulky. I actually prefer, as far as the durability of him, the way he's constructed, I prefer this over the NECA figures because the NECA ones feel kind of delicate and breakable. But yeah, this one feels like a nice, big, strong, durable toy, just like the toys that you remember from your childhood. And yeah, I think this guy's just really cool. He's got those extra arms. He's got the articulated wings. He had a whole bunch of accessories. Like he came with a Mouser, one of those little mechanical turtle hunting robots. And that glue in the dark as well. Or glowed in the dark. Anyway, really cool. So there you go. Baxter Stockman at number 19. Coming in at number 18 is Megatron. This is from the Transformers Red series that Hasbro put out pretty late in the year. These guys just came out maybe, I don't know, 2 months ago, 3 months ago at most. So, yeah, I'll be honest, this line didn't really live up to my expectations. They only put out 3 figures so far, Megatron, Optimus Prime, and Soundwave. And they're all pretty cool. But they're shorter than I would have liked. Like, they're smaller in stature than even the new 6-inch G.I. Joe line, which just seems a little silly. I like how simple they are. They look just like the cartoon. But considering that, the fact that they're still $30 and they're a little bit smaller and they lack, they don't transform, they don't have much in the way of paint apps and stuff. Like, they're pretty simply designed. I feel they should probably be cheaper, or if they're going to charge me $30, they should have made them bigger, bulkier. However, Megatron is a character. He's obviously an important character to the Transformers mythology, and I've never had a good Megatron figure, and I've always wanted one because I've had plenty of good Optimus Prime figures and lots of cool Soundwave figures. Even the very vintage Optimus Prime and Soundwave I thought were pretty cool figures, but I did not think the vintage 80s Megatron was a cool figure. It didn't live up to how he appeared in the cartoon. So I've been wanting a good Megatron for years. Earlier in 2020, I got this Megatron. Now, this is the Siege version of Megatron that was released a couple of months prior in these kind of gritty, dirty colors. But then they re-released it to look like he was in the cartoon. So I don't know if you can pick that up here. It's hard for me to tell on my little phone with the little screen. I don't know if the light is kind of drowning him out here, but the way he's painted, he looks like he's cell shaded, like he came off of the cartoon. Now this is a big, bulky Megatron. I thought this guy was great, and when I got this, I thought this guy is going to be on my best of list for sure this year. However, then I got the red version, and it was a toss-up. I'm like, which one of these guys is going to make my list? Because like this guy, my biggest complaint is kind of how small he is. This guy is just a little bit bigger, which I think is the perfect size. Both of them are based on the animation model. The only reason this version wins out is because I never transform my Transformers. I've never cared about that. Even when I was a kid, I just want cool robots. And even though I think they've done a very good job with this guy, he does still suffer from, he's got all this extra kind of kibble hanging off of him because they have to in order for him to transform into a tank or whatever. And he's got hollow parts, so things can fold in on themselves. And even though they've done a really good job on this figure hiding a lot of it or making it work, this is the figure that looks just like the cartoon. You turn him around, he doesn't have anything that you didn't see in the cartoon. He looks just like he's supposed to, and I think it looks great. So there you go. That's Megatron at number 18, I think. I should probably stop saying the numbers because I'm going to forget where I'm sitting. Anyway, so next up is another Transformer who's not really a Transformer. This is Devastator from Super 7's Reaction line. Now, I'm a big fan of Super 7's Reaction Transformers. Like, they do all kinds of different properties in this Reaction line. They're supposed to look like five points of articulation, kind of vintage Kenner Star Wars figures. So they take properties and they just make little simple figures of them that only move at the arms and turn their head and their legs. They don't have a ton of articulation. They're only 3 3/4 inches. They're simple in design. I have a bunch of Reaction figures from various properties, but the Transformers line is the one I decided I'm going to go all in. I'm going to collect these little Transformers. The reason for that is because, as I just said, I never really cared if the Transformers transformed. I just wanted them to look like they looked in the cartoon. Super 7 gave me that. I started buying them. I invested quite a bit of money to buy them. And then Hasbro announced the Red Series. Now, if I had known the Red Series was coming out, maybe I wouldn't have already kind of got into the Reaction figures because the Red Series are kind of the same thing, except more articulated and a little bit bigger, a little more detailed. So I like them a lot. But there's no denying my love for the Reaction figures, and I'm kind of already too deep into it. I've got the first 2.5 waves of figures. I've got the third wave on pre-order, so I don't think I'm going to give up on those. If anything, I might choose not to collect the Red Series. Maybe just buy my favorite characters, but I don't think I'm going to buy every one that comes out. But when it comes to these Reaction figures, I probably will buy them all. I got quite a few Transformer Reaction figures this year. I got all the Wave 2, and then they released, I guess we'll call it 2.0 or 2.5 on Black Friday. It was 4 exclusive repaint figures. They were all really cool too. The reason I chose Devastator to go on this list, it could have been almost any one of them. The Shockwave was great too. But Devastator, because he is a larger character, they actually made him larger. So a normal Reaction figure only stands about this big. So he's, quite a bit larger than them. It was kind of cool. The vintage card he came on was like an oversized blister card. It looked really cool. And yeah, I just love the look of this guy. And even with other Transformers, like even I said the vintage Megatron, he wasn't a great looking character. But you could still play with him. With Devastator, I always really loved Devastator. How he looked in the cartoon and comic book. He would combine and he would smash buildings and he was huge. The toy, the vintage one, and even I have a nice newer one, but he's a combiner, so he's made up of all these other smaller robots. And you can't really play with him and make him punch buildings over because he falls apart. He's very kind of brittle because of all the smaller components that build him up. And having a Devastator that is just one solid piece, it looks like he's made up of little parts. Like you can see he's got the little kind of bulldozer here and the little dump truck or whatever. So you can see he's supposed to look like he's a combiner, but he's not. He's one piece. Got the cement mixer there. Anyway, so I think this is great. This is finally a Devastator that can stomp around and you can punch, and I don't have to worry about him falling apart. And he looks great. So there you go. That's Devastator at number whatever. Next up, I've got another figure from Super 7. Now this is Lion-O from their Thundercats line. Now this is actually my first ever Thundercats figure. I was not a big Thundercats fan when I was a kid. I watched the cartoon some, but I never had any of the toys. I was more focused on G.I. Joe, Transformers, He-Man, and a couple of other things. I just never really got into Thundercats. but I always kind of appreciated them, especially in later years, where you see a lot of, I don't know, fan art and stuff where people combine Thundercats and He-Man, and you realize how much they complement each other. In the vintage toy line, the toys were different styles, so they didn't really mix together. But as far as like when you draw these characters, like they blend really well in cartoons and comics and stuff like that. So when Mattel was making the Masters of the Universe Classics figures, and then they started releasing Thundercats figures, I thought, this is cool. I might get into buying Thundercats, and they can just fit in seamlessly with my He-Man figures. Unfortunately, soon after they started, Mattel kind of gave it up, and the few figures they released were really hard to get. I never had an opportunity to get this Lion-O when Mattel released it years ago. Anyway, Super 7, who picked up the license for He-Man, also picked up the license for Thundercats, and they have re-released these figures with some changes. So the paint's a little different. He's got some different accessories, and they're going to carry on with this line. So where Mattel only did one wave, they've already got, I think, maybe 4 waves on pre-order, and the figures look great. So this is the first one I've gotten. He's pretty cool. He lives up to my expectations as far as design goes. You know, he's got his power sword. He's got his power glove, or whatever you want to call that. Really cool. This figure might have ranked higher for me, except I had a couple of problems with him. First off, he's supposed to have this little notch on his belt where you could clip his glove when not in use. I tried to clip the glove on there, and the peg broke off like immediately. Also, he has an alternate head with an angrier face, and I tried to put that on, and it wouldn't take. Like, the knob just wouldn't, his head wouldn't stick on. Now, mind you, if I had taken the hairdryer to it, loosened up the plastic, I probably could have got it on there. But ultimately, I was going to display him on my shelf with the more neutral face, so I was like, well, forget, I just won't bother. But when you're paying big money for these figures, these guys are like, for me, Canadian, these guys are like, I think $60 or something. Or it might even, maybe it's 60 American, and I'm paying, like, then you convert it to Canadian. Anyway, these guys are expensive as all hell. And so I expect them to be really, really good. This guy is really good, but he got bumped down a few slots, probably because of his quality control issues. But I am excited to get more of these Thundercats figures, and hopefully they fix some of those issues. Alright, next up. This is Storm from Marvel Legends. So this figure came in a 2-pack with Thunderbird. I just got her not too long ago. And it is a beautiful figure. It comes with 2 alternate heads and alternate capes. So I've got kind of a combination of things going. This is her kind of like neutral hanging cape. And she also had a neutral head with her hair was just kind of hanging flat. And then she had a cape that was all wind blown. And then her hair, which is the head I've got here, all wind blown as well. So I've kind of crisscrossed the 2 of them. But one of the reasons for that is I also had issues getting her alternate head on. So again, not a big deal. And I probably prefer the windblown head, but they're both great. It's like the face sculpt is probably what puts this figure so high up on my list, because I've never been like particularly a huge Storm fan. I'm not a diehard X-Men fan in general, but if you ask me who my top 5 X-Men would be, Storm is not one of them. However, this figure is just perfect compared to the other Storm figures that have come before it. I think it's just so superior. It just looks great. It's got some cool accessories, like I said, the alternate head, the alternate cape, but also some like electricity attachments for her hands so she could generate lightning and stuff like that. So just really cool. So yeah, a really solid Storm figure from Hasbro. Next up. So this is General Spydrax from the revived Sectors line. And this is made by Zika Toys. So Zika has brought back this 80s property. Now, when these figures were around in the 80s, they were much bigger. And they've shrunk them down to 3 3/4 inch figures. They put them on these kind of cool, like vintage style card backs, which look great. There's 6 figures in their first wave. I have 4 of them, and I will eventually get the other figures. But man, these were a pleasant surprise. Like Thundercats, I was aware of Sectors. I thought they were kind of neat. The vintage toys, the way they worked is you got the 6-inch figure, and then they rode around on these giant bugs and spiders, which were puppets. So you put your hand in this hairy spider, and it went like that, and you sat the character on your like wrist, and that's how you were supposed to play. It was a cool concept, but just not one that I really get into. and the toy line was too short-lived. I think it only made it for like one, maybe two waves of figures, and then it was gone. So I never got into it, but I thought, you know what, these guys look pretty cool. I'm going to kind of give it a try. So I ordered 2 of the figures initially. So I ordered the 2 main characters. So I ordered Dargon, who's the main good guy, and Spydrax here, who's the main bad guy. And I thought, you know, since I don't have a huge nostalgic attachment to these figures, I'm just going to take them and I'm going to put a tack in them and I'll just hang them on my wall like so, and I'll just kind of enjoy them like that. But when I saw how great the sculpts were, I was just like dying to play with these figures. So I kind of sliced the cards open so that I could pull the figure out of here. Okay. Bear with me. Yeah, so I pulled that out. So now I can put him back in there. So he looks sealed, but he's not. But man, these figures are just a lot of fun. For a company as small as Zika Toys, like they're like a new small little company, I did not expect such quality figures from them. Like this thing has a ton of articulation on him. He feels just as good as like a G.I. Joe from Hasbro, maybe even better. He's got little magnets in his feet, so he can stick upside down. You can make him walk up your fridge, which is just like a really cool feature. He's got a bunch of accessories. Like he had, I think, like 8 different hands. He had an alternate head. This one I've got his kind of angry, scowling head, but he had a more neutral expression. He's got a couple little pistols that are holstered on each side of him here. And this guy had a whip, like a rubbery whip, which was really cool. I think he had a shield as well. He's got this really nice kind of reflective purple paint on his armor. He just looks really sharp. And this was one of those things that was just such a nice surprise. I did not expect to be as blown away by these figures as I was. But if you have not checked out these Sectors from Zika Toys, I highly recommend you do. And they have a Kickstarter going right now for Wave 2. They're quite a ways away from meeting their goal. So definitely get some of these Wave 1 figures, but I encourage you to back the Kickstarter so we can get the Wave 2 figures as well, because these guys are awesome, and I'd like to see this series go even deeper than Wave 2. Next up, got another Marvel Legend here. So this is Nimrod. So this guy came in a 3-pack along with Phantom X and Psylocke, and this was an Amazon exclusive pack. And yeah, this guy is just like big, heavy. He's like simple, like he doesn't have much paint. His whole body is kind of this like pearly, like shiny white, and then he's got, you know, the pink that you see on him. So he's got these like pink fins on the back which can snap on and off. He had 2 of these like energy blast made out of this kind of translucent pink. He's got 2 alternate hands, so I've got him with 1 fisted hand and 1 open palm, so you can put 2 open palms or 2 fists on him. And he also had alternate heads, one of them with a silver faceplate and one of them with this pink faceplate. Now, I'll be honest, I'm not like a gigantic Nimrod fan per se. He's an X-Men villain, and as I said, I haven't ever really been a huge X-Men fan. I read the comic books in the 80s when my brother collected X-Men comic books, but I've never collected them on my own, and as an adult, I haven't read hardly like any X-Men comic books. But Nimrod was a character that was introduced during the period of time when I was reading it regularly, and I just thought he was such a cool-looking character. This just big white guy, this robot with his pink face, and he's just really cool, and he's never had a figure that I'm aware of. I think this is the first ever Nimrod action figure, and yeah, he just really is exactly what I would want in a Nimrod. He's big, he's bulky, he's awesome. And yeah, getting a new character is, you know, it's getting more and more rare these days. We tend to get rehashes of the same characters over and over again. So getting this brand new Nimrod, I was super stoked. And I think he's awesome. So, next up, this is kind of going in the complete opposite direction. So where I said, you know, we get tired of getting the same old character over and over again. So Nimrod, it was a refreshing change. My next character is Spider-Man. Now, Spider-Man is probably the character that I have the most of in my entire toy collection. I've got dozens and dozens of Spider-Man variations. So this here is the Spider-Man that we got in the what they call the Spider-Man Retro Wave. And the reason it was retro is just because it came on these kind of retro-style card backs. And I didn't expect to like this figure as much as I did, to be honest. I almost didn't buy it. Like, if I had seen these in stores, I might have passed on Spider-Man just because he's a completely classic Spider-Man. There's nothing fancy about him. You know, they make so many variations of Spider-Man with different suits on and armor and all that stuff. And I don't particularly feel like I need those figures, but at least it's something different. With this guy, it's just another Spider-Man. However, when I pre-ordered I wanted some of the other figures in this wave. And at the time, the only way I could order it on Big Bad Toy Store was to order the whole wave, and they weren't doing pre-orders on the individual figures. So I said, okay, well, I'll just pre-order the wave, whatever. I'll get an extra Spider-Man. Who cares? Anyway, this Spider-Man is fantastic because it is so simple. It's just a classic Spider-Man that is great. What most people consider the best classic Spider-Man before this was this guy here. And you might not even know the difference. Like, what's the difference? Trust me, there's plenty of differences in the articulation, the sculpt, and the paint. This guy sucks now compared to this guy. Like, even just like the eyes and stuff on him, this guy's got just like a much more classic Spider-Man head. I just love everything about this, and I didn't know I needed this figure so bad until I got it in hand. And I was like, yes, this is the perfect Spider-Man figure. I don't think they can do any better than this at this point. I just love everything about him. Sometimes I think they make Spider-Man too skinny, which is one of the problems with this figure. Sometimes they make him too gangly because they try and give him too much articulation, and he ends up having all kinds of weird joints on him and stuff. This guy is just perfect as far as all that stuff goes. So yeah, Spider-Man, fantastic. Love it. So next up, we have got Maximilian. So this was made by Diamond Select Toys, I believe. I'm pretty sure. And this is based on the old Disney movie, The Black Hole. Now, I'll be honest, I'm not going to try and pretend like I'm this diehard Black Hole fan. When I got these toys, they released 3 Black Hole toys earlier this year. So there was Maximilian, and then there was the 2 cute little kind of R2-D2 type robots, Vincent and Bob. I got all 3 of them. Vincent and Bob came in a 2-pack together, while this guy, who's much larger, came on his own. And I did see The Black Hole as a kid, or at least I think I did. I don't really have any memory of it other than my brother had the comic book adaptation. So I remember being able to read that comic book, which is this kind of big oversized comic. And we had some of the toys. Like, I had the Vincent toy when I was a kid. I no longer have it, unfortunately. But it's one of those things that when I had a toy as a kid, even if it was for a property that I didn't particularly love, I regretted getting rid of it in my adult life. So, like, I kept all my vintage G.I. Joes. That's because it was I looked at them as like a whole collection. But I had a lot of random stuff, like 1 Black Hole figure, a couple of figures from like the Star Trek movie, just random things like that, a Voltron figure. And I got rid of all that stuff, and like, man, I really regretted getting rid of all that kind of randomy stuff. And Vincent was a toy I always wanted to get again. And I would look on eBay, and I'm like, yeah, well, this one's kind of busted up. Do I really want to pay this much money for some old toy from the 80s? And, the figure was only like this big. He was like an R2-D2. Anyway, then when Diamond Select announced they were going to do not only Vincent with Bob in a 2-pack, but also Maximilian, who's like the evil robot from the movie, I was like, hell yeah. So I ordered all of them, and Vincent and Bob are great too. I highly recommend you get those figures if you're a Black Hole fan, or even if you're not. They're just really fun figures. They've got all kinds of extra accessories, like you can change it, all these little arms on them and little legs on them and all that sort of stuff. They're really fun. They're really cute. But Maximilian, I think he just edged them out in that he's in his awesomeness. Like, look at how big and bulky this guy. This guy's heavy. Look at the size of the display base that they had to give him just so he could hover the way he kind of hovers around in the movie like that. And that's one of the things that's so great about him, is that they gave you the figure, but they gave you this display base that you can properly display him without worrying about him falling over and breaking, which happens so often with these collectibles. So I love the display base. I love how solid he sits on there. I love how solid he is as a figure. I love all the interchangeable parts. Like, he's got some of these kind of electricity accessories, kind of similar to what Storm would have had with her lightning powers. So he's got a couple of those. He's got these little drill hands. So you see there's like a closed drill on this hand. I've got an open kind of spinning claw type hand. So you can change out those hands. So if you want a couple of closed ones or a couple of open ones. See, he's got these kind of multiple appendages that are all articulated. He had an alternate head. He just had a lot of parts, and he's just really cool, and he's so different. When you do buy a lot of G.I. Joes and a lot of Marvel figures and all that sort of stuff, even though it's really cool and there's some great figures, it does get a little repetitive, and it's just really fun and refreshing to get something like this, which is so different in the collection. So yeah, I was really stoked about all of these Black Hole figures. The movie, by the way, is available to watch on Disney Plus. I've been telling myself since I posted the video where I reviewed these things in full months ago, and I said, you know what? After I post this video, I'm going to go watch The Black Hole. I still haven't done it. I'm going to do it, but regardless of how good or bad that movie ends up being, the figures are awesome. This is a really cool Maximilian figure, so yeah, highly recommended. Next up, I think we're cracking into my top 10 here, if I'm keeping count properly. So yeah, that was 20 to 11. So here's number 10. So this is She-Hulk from Marvel Legends. Now, this is one of the figures that was technically released in 2019. I think this whole wave of Fantastic Four figures, so it was the 4 members of the Fantastic Four, Doctor Doom, and She-Hulk, and the Build-A-Figure was the Super Skrull. So that was solicited to come out in December. So I think there probably are some people out there that got this wave in December. Maybe some of those figures are on people's best of 2019 lists, but they would have been very late in the year. For me, they came very early this year. So it was January when I got these figures. The Fantastic Four figures were fine. The Build-A-Figure, Super Skrull, he was pretty cool. But the She-Hulk and the Doctor Doom, I opened them up and I thought, man, are these great figures. And from the get-go, I was like, starting my list right now, because I started thinking about it right away. I was like, these guys are going to be on my top 10 lists. You know, there's going to have to be some pretty awesome figures this year to knock these guys out, because these are the toys to beat right now. And there's a lot of great figures, and she obviously got bumped down a few slots. She's at number 10. But I can't even, it's hard for me to even explain why I like this figure so much. I'm not like a huge She-Hulk fan. This figure, as you can see, is not green like you would expect. This is her with her very short-lived gray look with all these kind of like green scars across her skin. The comic when this first happened to her, I think, was in Civil War II. She got, I don't know, battle damaged by Thanos and woke up gray. And I don't know. I read the Civil War comic book, but I didn't read the She-Hulk comic book that followed it. It was pretty short-lived, I think. But all that aside, one of the things I like about this figure is that it isn't the green She-Hulk. I've already had a few green She-Hulks figures in the past, and it's nice to get something kind of just new and fresh. So this is a brand new contemporary look for this character. She's already lost this look. She's got a new look now. Now she's kind of like really big and bulky looking, kind of like the male Hulk. She's much less feminine than she used to be. So this was, this look had come and gone within less than a year, I would say. But sometimes I'm really happy when they capture these like little wild looks in action figures, because I think it just makes for a great figure. She looks great in this gray. The face sculpt on there, I don't know if you can see that, but like the face sculpt is beautiful on this figure. They've done a really good job with Storm and with She-Hulk of capturing these like really attractive female face sculpts. Like the body design with the tears in the jeans, like that all looks really good. Like that's all textured. You can feel all the rips and tears in there. Yeah, everything about this figure is just super solid. And maybe it's just because I'm a little biased because I got it so early in the year. And I said, and just saying that in my head, like, this is the one to beat. Every time I got a good new figure, I always was kind of comparing it to her. And so, yeah, she stayed in that list all year long. And I think it's a great, great figure. So next up at number 9, this was tough because I could have put a couple of figures in this spot. These guys, it's kind of like I mentioned how I lumped all my Stormtroopers together. This here is one of the Masters of the Universe movie-based figures. There was 4 figures in the line. There was regular Skeletor, this Golden God Skeletor, there was the Dolph Lundgren He-Man, and then there was Karg. Karg is the only one I kind of didn't really care about. But yeah, when it came to the 2 Skeletors and the He-Man, like these are figures I've wanted for decades. They never made these figures when the movie came out back in the 80s, and waited years for these things, and Super 7 has finally given them to us. It was through some like legal loophole they were finally able to make these, because they're based on like the concept art instead of the actual likenesses from the movie or something like that. I don't know, but it looks just like the movie, so the concept art must have been like spot on here. But yeah, this looks incredible. I love the regular Skeletor as well, but I think the Golden God Skeletor is just such a unique look, and the body is basically the same as the other Skeletor, so all this texture and stuff here, you'll see that same thing on the other Skeletor. But yeah, the golden paint job and just kind of some of the extra layers here in that helmet, like man, look at that helmet. Like, that's crazy. And he's got the golden Havoc staff there. Like, these movie figures are all really awesome. The Skeletor, I think the regular Skeletor was number like 21 on my list. So if I went a little bit farther, you would have seen the other Skeletor figure as well. And He-Man was ranked pretty high as well. But these guys are all awesome. I love these figures from Super 7. Next up, probably one of the most exciting toy things that happened this year was the launch of G.I. Joe Classified, the new 6-inch G.I. Joe line. Not only because it was a new line of G.I. Joes, but just because G.I. Joes were back. G.I. Joe hadn't been at retail for several years. There was a couple like collector's figures released available online, but they were very expensive and they were just made of existing parts and repaints. So to get brand new sculpted G.I. Joes and in this brand new scale that G.I. Joe has never been in before at 6 inches, I was super excited about these things. And so far they've really delivered the goods. I like every single one of the figures in this line so far. There's not that many. I think I have about 10 that came out this year, and there's a couple store exclusives that I wasn't able to get, which I'm a little bitter about, but whatever. So yeah, it was really hard to pick which ones would be here, because they almost all could have been in my top 20. Like the Snake Eyes figure is great. I really like the look of Scarlet. I think it's the best Scarlet figure we've ever gotten. But in this slot here, I've got Destro, the Cobra Arms dealer. And kind of the reason I put him in here is because it is just such a cool like update of the vintage figure. Like, they haven't changed much about him at all. With some of the other figures, they kind of changed up their designs, or maybe took two existing designs and mashed them together or something like that. But this Destro is classic. He looks just like the original Destro figure from back in the 80s, except with like superior sculpting. He's got some great accessories with this gun here. He's got this little gold pistol that holsters on his leg. He's got this briefcase which is full of money, I think, if I remember correctly. Anyway, and just that head sculpt. He's got that medallion around his neck, the big huge collar. Like, what's not to love about this figure? So like I said, it was very hard not to put all of the G.I. Joe Classified figures on here, but this guy was definitely one of the best if I'm forced to rank them, which I forced myself to do. So anyway, great figure in Destro. Next up, we have a figure from, again, I believe this is Diamond Select Toys. So the same guys that gave us the Black Hole figures. But this is the Iron Giant. And the Iron Giant is a beloved movie of mine. Came out in the late 90s. And yeah, this I've always wanted a good figure of the Iron Giant. And the only Iron Giant figure I've had in my collection for years was this little teeny guy. He's about 3 inches big. He came with the VHS copy of the movie. So that's the only Iron Giant figure I've had. They have made other ones, but most of them are really high-end, expensive figures. Like large, like $300 figures, and just that priced me out of it. So this is what I've always wanted. This is like I don't know how big he is, like maybe 8 inches tall, 8 or 9 inches tall. So he's big. He's super articulated. He's got lots of great movement. You can see him at the knees, the joint, the torso there. So yeah, great movement, good size, and cheap. This guy was like $30, like the price of a Marvel Legend or something. Like, that's amazing. And like you can see there, he's got his little buddy Hogarth as an accessory on his shoulder. You can take that off. He's got the Superman S. You can take that off as an accessory. His jaw is articulated, and his eyes. I don't know if you can see there, but his eyes light up. There's a little switch on his back here. So all that combined just makes for a fantastic figure. I've wanted this figure essentially for, again, decades. And yeah, we finally got him. And I think he's awesome. He could have almost been my number one. I was so excited about this guy. And the quality of him is just fantastic. But, okay, now we're moving into, what's this, number 6, I think? So this is another one that when I thought it could maybe end up being my number one. And this is also a figure that I think was released in 2019, technically. But I had pre-ordered it online back in 2019, maybe even earlier than that. And I think they started shipping out earlier in 2019, but I didn't get mine until 2020. So I don't know why, but anyway, this is Merman, that Masters of the Universe character that I love. But this one was produced by Mondo Toys. And this is a 12-inch Merman figure. And this thing is just a beast. Like, he's got this giant trident, he's got his sword. But look at the head sculpt on this guy. Like, this is the best Merman has ever looked, if you ask me. Just super cool. Like, I'm still kind of just blown away looking at him. This guy is heavy. Like, the detailing in his, like, his shin guards there, in his cloth, he's got these little dangly bits hanging off his belt. The detail in his sword. Like, the sword has always looked kind of like a corn on the cob. Like, if I bring up that other Merman here for a sec. Like, look at that sword. I don't know what it was supposed to be, but it just looks like a bunch of corn kernels. It never really looked like anything that would be scary to get stabbed with. But then this figure comes along, and for the first time you're like, oh shit, that sword is made of like shark's teeth or something. That looks deadly. So the fact that they were able to do that, like this chest piece, the way this whole, like, this looks like the mouth of some sort of sea creature that his head is through with all these teeth around him. Like, they've just taken his original design concept and really just cranked it up to 11. This thing is amazing. This thing I've got in a glass display case out in my den. It's not like down here hidden in the man cave. This is like a real quality display piece, and I absolutely love it. I love Merman. Mondo killed it with this. The only reason it's not at like number 1 is because of the scale. As much as I appreciate the 12-inch scale, and it really gives you a chance to showcase the figure, and it doesn't just look like an action figure, the size of it is really kind of what helps to make it more of a display piece. Like, but it's just not a size that I particularly like. I never had it as a kid. I had a handful of 12-inch dolls, but you know, it's not. When I even now, I want to collect toys that I could play with. I could imagine myself playing with the toys, and if all my He-Man figures were this big, it's almost just too overwhelming. It's too much. So just for that reason alone, because 12 inches is not my preferred scale, that kind of bumps them down. But that is not to say anything about the quality of this figure being inferior or anything. It is awesome. And he comes with a nice handy display base, which holds him up with cool etching on the bottom there. And yeah, so this kind of sits in his crotch there and catches him. So yeah, he's able to stand up nicely in my display, and he's awesome. All right, so now I think we're into my top 5. So this guy here, this is another one that I thought was almost a shoo-in for number 1. Back when I placed my pre-order for it, I was like, I know I'm going to love this figure. I thought I was going to get him in 2019, but he got delayed. I didn't get him until 2020. I don't know if anybody got him in 2019. Some people may have. But I got him kind of, I think it was probably around March or so. So I've had him for a while now. But this is Bebop from NECA. Bebop was always my favorite character from the Ninja Turtles. And none of the previous toys of him have ever really captured what I liked about Bebop. I really liked the way he looked in the cartoon. I thought the old toy was, I don't know, he looked a little grosser maybe. In some of the movies, they made him really fat. Yeah, I just haven't really loved what they've done with him in any of the other toy lines or previous incarnations. But this one looks exactly like the cartoon. Like, that face sculpt looks awesome. His shades, you can lift them up. He's got little black eyes under there, which I don't know if we've ever seen before. His jaw is articulated, so you can open his mouth up a little bit. I'll try to do that here. Anyway, you can see he's got his tongue sculpted in there. He's got those turtle shells. He's got like real chains. Like, well, it's plastic, but you know, they're movable little chains. He's got the same thing on his wrist. He's fantastic. And he's got, he had a bunch of accessories as well, interchangeable hands and weapons. Like, he looks awesome. This is the perfect Bebop figure as far as looks go. Where it falls short is in the quality a little bit. Like, the plastic, it feels a little brittle. I'm scared to move him, like with his jaw there. Maybe it can open farther than that, but it feels like it resists. His elbows, he's got double jointed elbows, and yet I'm scared to move them because it really doesn't want to. Like, you really have to kind of take the hairdryer to this whole figure in order to pose him. I don't have him holding any weapons because I was scared to kind of take his interchangeable hands off. Everything about him feels very delicate. And even though Bebop has not broken in any way, like the Rocksteady figure that he came with, his arm is falling off. Like, you can see it's in the joint there, and I'm scared it's going to break anytime now. So that is a bummer, because I wish these things, you know, I'd feel comfortable playing with them. I wish I could give it to my nephew and say, oh yeah, play with him on the floor. But I'd almost be certain he'd be broken in 10 minutes if I gave him to my nephew to play with. So for that reason alone, like, it's the same reason that I don't have a lot of Spawn toys on my list and stuff usually, because McFarlane Toys makes more, display pieces and they're not so much toys. Even though I don't play with my toys and I just display them, I still like them to feel like toys. And this guy's just a little too delicate. Okay, so 2, 3, 4. So he was number 5. So yeah, this is number 4. And this one was a surprise to me. When I pre-ordered this figure, I didn't think he'd be a top 10 figure at all. But I absolutely loved it when I got it. This is another one from Super 7, similar to their Masters of the Universe Thundercats line. This is kind of just a one-off figure they did of Conan the Barbarian based on his look in the old Marvel comic books. So, yeah, he's got a couple of interchangeable weapons. You see I've got him with his spear and his sword. He also had bloody versions of those same weapons. Here I've got his yelling face on, but he also had an alternate head with a more kind of just calm, neutral expression. So he had lots of accessories. The box that he came in was really cool. He's got this dagger on his belt, which you can also hold. But I don't know. Maybe it's because when I got this figure earlier in the year, it had been so long since I got a Masters of the Universe Classics figure that it was just refreshing to get one of these figures in hand again. Because I used to get a Masters of the Universe figure every month back when Matty Collector's kind of service was available. And I really miss getting those Masters of the Universe figures. I really love this kind of body design, this big, bulky, exaggerated, kind of cartoony muscle man. And yeah, with Conan, I don't particularly like the helmeted look for Conan. I would have preferred a more Frank Frazetta looking Conan type figure, I thought. But when I ordered this thing just because I'm like, well, it's the only Conan figure around these days. I'm currently reading the Conan comic books by Marvel. He doesn't wear a helmet like this. And I thought, well, what the hell? I might as well get it. And man, I'm super glad I got him. I think this guy's a lot of fun. He feels nice and durable. He moves just like any of the Masters of the Universe Classics figure. He fits in perfectly with that collection. So, he looks right at home next to, say, Lion-O here. These guys could be part of the same toy line. They look great. So, yeah, Super 7 has been making some great stuff. And, yeah, Conan, love him. All right, so number 3. As I said with the She-Hulk, Doctor Doom was one of the toys to beat. That was established in January. And, yeah, only 2 toys beat out Doctor Doom. I love this Doctor Doom figure. It is just so cool. The head sculpt. So he had 2 different head sculpts. He had one kind of a more classic one, and this is a more contemporary design. But I love that texture. I don't know if you can see that, but this looks like real material all through here. The wrinkles and everything on his tunic. The way the cape hangs looks fantastic. And I love the way the hood is sculpted, the way it sits. It just looks really cool the way it kind of hangs out over his face and his head's kind of sunken down in there. The detail on this modern head sculpt is which I haven't displayed on. I really love the look of that helmet there. Yeah, he's awesome. He's a classic looking Doctor Doom with a little bit of a contemporary flair. And yeah, he's just a character that really, really needed an update. Marvel Legends has been killing it for years. For the last, 5 years, Hasbro's been making just fantastic figures. And we really needed Doctor Doom. He's one of the biggest villains in all the Marvel Universe. And it took them a while to get to him. But when they did, they really knocked it out of the park. So much so that they just recently re-released this figure. And I debated on whether I should buy it again because it was December when I got this figure and I'm Christmas shopping and I'm broke. But when I saw it, I couldn't pass it up. This one came in kind of a normal Marvel Legends box, which isn't very exciting. But this one they released on kind of this vintage card to look like the old Fantastic Four animated line. And you can see the differences here. The colors are quite a bit different. That thing around his neck is different. He's actually got some cloth material there. He's got a bunch of accessories. He's got the ultimate nullifier and some books of magic and stuff. And the head sculpts are actually different. This has got the classic head, and he doesn't have the alternate modern head. So even if I display these guys together, their heads are different. So even though they're pretty similar figures, there's enough differences there that warranted me buying them again because it was such a good figure. I didn't want to regret not getting this one. I haven't decided if I'm going to open this guy up yet or not because I already have that guy on my shelf. And this, in the vintage card back, it kind of looks like kind of a cool display piece. So I'm kind of tempted to just tack it up on my wall like that. But I don't know. Time will tell. Okay, number 2. This one was kind of a surprise because I didn't know this figure was coming out at the start of the year. But then it came out, and I got this pretty early on during the pandemic. I remember when all the stores were closed, but Toys R Us had this guy available online on their website, and they said you could drive by the store and they would put him in your trunk. So that's a memory I will associate with him. This is like the first toy I got during the pandemic. But this Red Hulk figure is awesome. Like, this is the kind of the size of the figure you'd expect to see in a Marvel like Build-A-Figure. But this was sold as like a deluxe figure in a larger box. And I really like the Red Hulk. I've always been a bigger Red Hulk fan than a Green Hulk fan. I think that's partly because like, I've just never been a big Hulk fan. And when the Red Hulk was introduced, one of my favorite comic book artists, Ed McGuinness, was drawing the Hulk series. And he basically was the first artist to draw Red Hulk. And so, yeah, I started buying the Hulk book at that point in time because of Ed McGuinness. And I kind of got hooked on the Red Hulk. And this toy, I think, does a pretty good job of capturing Ed McGuinness's artwork. I love that kind of angry, sideways mouth scowl. He looks really pissed. Yeah, he's just great. Like, my favorite 3 3/4 inch Marvel figure that I had for many years was a little Red Hulk I had. He's only about this big. But again, he was just a really big, bulky figure, and he looked a lot like Ed McGuinness's artwork, and I loved it. I kept him on display even after I put all my other 3 3/4 inch Marvel figures away. And yeah, this guy here, I feel I can put that other little Red Hulk away now because this guy he does everything that little one did, but even better. He's got great articulation. The sculpting is fantastic. He's big. He's mean. Love it. It was a nice surprise to get this figure, and yeah, I think he's great. Now, that brings us to number 1. And I've got him way over here. I'm gonna reach over here. This one is a surprise to me. In a year that I got basically the Bebop of my dreams. I got 2 new mermen. I got all kinds of cool figures. These Master of the Universe movie figures that I've waited years to get. And there's, like I said, 200 other figures, and they're almost all good. I would not have expected to put this figure at number 1, but this is another one of the G.I. Joe classified figures from Hasbro, and this is Duke. Now, Duke is kind of the, sort of the leader, I guess he's the field commander, whatever you want to call him, of G.I. Joe, and he's a character I've never particularly liked. Like, in the cartoon, I didn't like him a whole lot. He was fine, but, like, he was kind of bland compared to all the other interesting characters. Like, why would you like Duke when there was Snake Eyes and Shipwreck and Alpine and, Bazooka? Like, he was just kind of the, blonde hair, blue eyes, goody two-shoes, uninteresting. And yeah, then the comic books, I never particularly liked him. The movies where they got Channing Tatum to play him, it was fine. But, he's one of the least interesting characters in those movies. I've just never been a Duke fan, but I know Duke is kind of a necessity. Anytime they reboot G.I. Joe, I know there's going to be a Duke, and I don't hate him. I don't have a problem with him. But I've never really particularly liked any Duke figures. My favorite Duke figure is actually in the 3 3/4 inch line. They did one based on the cartoon. What is it? I forget which cartoon it's based on because was it Renegades or anyway, one of those things. Anyway, it's a cool Duke figure. But I did not expect Duke to be the top of my list because of just as a character, I don't particularly like him that much. But man, this Duke is everything I would want Duke to be. So one of the reasons he got to shoot up to the top of the list is kind of from the most unexpected improvement of a character. Like the face sculpt, even though he's still kind of that blonde American pretty boy, like I love the way they sculpted his hair. Like, I don't know if you can see that here, but with the shade on the sides and the back, and like that look on his face, he's got the scar. Yeah, again, I don't know how this is picking up on my phone, but just like a really cool look for him. He's got his classic look with the kind of the tan shirt and the green pants, but they've added enough accessories to just make it interesting. So things like the gloves and the watch and the knee pads and the shin guards. I know some people were really bent out of shape about the gold, the shin guards and stuff, but I think they add to the character and make it more interesting to look at. He's got his removable backpack there. And just the fact that they did things like paint the shovel, so it's not just a big green hunk on his back. You can see he's got a little pistol holster on his leg there. He's got the bigger machine gun. Yeah, it's just everything about this figure just really delivered for me. And when I got the first 5 figures from G.I. Joe Classified, like Snake Eyes was really cool, but he kind of felt like more of the same. Scarlet, I think it's the best Scarlet figure, but there was some issues I had with her. I don't know, she looks a little too young and happy or something. Roadblock, he's my least favorite. I didn't necessarily love his look, but yeah, Destro was really great because he was so classic, and Duke was so great just because he wasn't so classic. Like they took some chances on him, they changed up his look, and yeah, I think he looks great. So yeah, he has a lot of competition, and I'm not saying this guy's leaps and bounds better than anybody else, but yeah, when I put this list together, Duke just kept getting put at the top, and nobody was taking him out. I think this is a really, really cool figure. So there you go. That's my top 20 of 2020. Now, I don't think I'm going to bother ever doing a video or anything to tell you about my other rankings from 240 up to 21. But if you're curious about any figures and where they ranked, or if anybody wants to see that video, I wouldn't do it in one shot. Maybe I'd have to break it up into segments of 20. We could go through the whole year worth of stuff. I don't know. Let me know if you're interested in seeing that. But anyway, thank you very much for sitting through this. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm curious what your top figures of the year were. Please let me know your list below. Are there any of the figures that I put in my list that you're shocked that I put in there over other figures? Let me know. I'm always eager to talk about that sort of stuff. So hopefully this works out. Like I said, I'm shooting it on my phone. Hopefully it uploads everything okay, because I really hope I didn't just waste an hour plus doing this for nothing. But assuming everything works out and that I get it posted, please hit that like button, leave me comments below, subscribe to the channel, and yeah, I'll see you next time. Ciao.